And Iran is seeing the biggest protest yet of nearly 2 weeks of rallies.
The movement, which originated with a shutdown on the Tehran Bazaar on 28th of December after the real currency plunged to record lows, has now spread across the country and is being marked by large-scale demonstrations, including capital Tehran.
Now, protesters massed on a key avenue in Tehran. Crowds of people as well as vehicles honking in support filled as part of the vast Ayatollah Khamenei Boulevard.
Persian language TV channels based outside Iran and other social media outlets posted images of significant protests in other cities as well, including Tabriz in the north and the holy city of Mashhad in the east. The demonstrations seemed to have grown after Reza Pahlavi, who is the son of Shah ousted by the 1979 revolutions, called for mass actions on Thursday.
No other videos published of the protest on Khamenei Boulevard in Tehran showed people chanting anti-government slogans, including death to the dictator. People were also seen packing a major road in Vakilabad, district of Mashhad, which is home to one of Shiite Islam's holiest shrines. As protests roil, online live metrics show Iran is now in the midst of a nationwide blackout.
Well, Pahlavi has condemned the Iranian government for cutting all lines of communication, which includes shutting down the internet and even attempting to jam satellite signals. He also called on all European leaders to follow the lead of President Donald Trump in supporting the people of Iran and holding the regime to account.
Well, Trump has threatened to take severe action against Iran if its authorities start killing people, warning Washington would hit them very hard. Now, that message came after rights groups accused Iranian security forces of shooting at demonstrators, with the Norway-based NGO Iran Human Rights saying security forces had killed at least 45, including 8 minors, since the demonstrations began. The NGO said on Wednesday that it was the bloodiest day of demonstrations, with 13 protesters confirmed to have been killed. And to discuss furthermore the situation in Iran, we are now being joined by Jack Rush, researcher at the London School of Economics from Connecticut. Thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast. Now, looking at these demonstrations, it does not seem that it's going to die down anytime soon. 45 people had been killed, and Pahlavi is now calling for even more demonstrations, reaching out to Trump. At this point of time, how do you analyze the situation and the upheaval in Iran, and how do you think it will go further?
Well, it's undeniable that the protests in Iran are amassing a large amount of support from a broad swath of Iranian society, between bazaris, students, members of Iran's shrinking middle class, people who are frustrated with Iran's economic situation, political repression, corruption, and other issues. Because it's amassing this support, it's likely that Iran is going to enter a cycle of protests that is as large as what we saw in 2022. Now, it's unclear so far if the protests have reached that level, but with the demonstrations we've seen tonight, if that continues, it's likely that this will be the largest protest we've seen in a number of years.
Yes, Jack, coming to the role of Reza Pahlavi here, how do you see this vis-a-vis the situation that's only been escalating over the last 2 weeks? How do you see him calling on the protesters to not step down when it comes to their protests, which have been happening for 13 days now?
So Reza Pahlavi has been a very important voice in rallying Iranians within the diaspora and within his base of support in Iran. Reza Pahlavi obviously is not in Iran, so it's difficult for him to coordinate on the ground, but he's an important voice in drawing international attention to the situation in Iran. He's an important voice in seeking to encourage members of the regime to potentially defect and support the protesters. And for that reason, I think we should be listening to what he has to say, and it seems likely that the Trump administration will do so as well. I've heard reports that he's set to meet with Donald Trump in coming days. Now, it's unclear as to whether the United States will seek to support putting Reza Pahlavi on the throne. Reza Pahlavi himself has said that's not something that he would want. But even still, he remains an important voice, and it's likely that he will continue to be a central figure as the protests unfold, especially outside of Iran.
And talking about that, Pahlavi, as you mentioned, has been calling on President Trump to reiterating the same thing. But considering the fact that, just recently the U.S. Senate had taken this major step to limit Donald Trump's military action in Venezuela, how do you think that influences, and how much leverage do you think Trump has into influencing his power on Iran?
Well, Donald Trump has shown a willingness to engage in decisive action, as we saw earlier this year with strikes on Iran during the 12-day war with Israel, and as we saw recently with Maduro. So it appears likely that Donald Trump doesn't feel restrained by complaints from Congress, both within his party and from the Democratic Party. And if he sees it as in the interests of the United States and his administration, I think he could definitely take action in coming days.
Right. Jack, just last question before we let you go, talking about the digital censorship across Iran in several of the cities across Iran. How do you view this? Do you think it can essentially help in cracking down on the protesters? Because these protests are just continuing and show no signs of abating at all.
So Iran has seen a number of major large-scale protests over the last several decades. In all of those protests, there has been a degree of censorship and media blackouts that have led to or facilitated repressive crackdowns. So I think it's quite possible that we're seeing the same thing happening now, tonight, as we speak. It's also likely that the Islamic Republic sees censorship through media blackouts, through restricting access to the internet, to telephones, as an important part of its international diplomatic strategy as well. It's much more easy for the Islamic Republic to control the narrative if there are not alternative sources of information coming out of the country. And so we've already seen some misinformation regarding what is being chanted at the protests, what the protesters are seeking. And that, the narrative becomes much tighter for the Islamic Republic, easier to control if these blackouts take place. And I think that's what we're seeing right now.
Yes, Jack, point taken. Of course, this is a fluid, volatile situation. Remains to be seen how things pan out, essentially. But thank you for your time. Thanks for speaking to WION.